And welcome to the latest edition of the Pump Fake. I'm Jarrett Bailey, joined by my friend from Betting the Bets on the KC Sports Betting Network, Ben Heisler. It is so good to see you, my friend. How are you?
I'm well, Jarrett. I would be doing better if the team that I root for wasn't a complete and total colossal dumpster fire, and it also happens to be coming to the city that I work and have lived in now for almost 10 years. I remember beginning of the season, I was very excited to attend Bears at Chiefs. This week, not so much. It's rough out here.
I feel like that game is going to go one of two ways. The Chiefs are going to win by 90, or somehow, some way, the Bears are going to hang with them, and it's going to be something that the Chiefs, win by a field goal or something of that nature. There's not going to be an in-between when it comes to that.
No, 100%. And I think Vegas is kind of gearing up for that as well. That line for that game is anywhere between 12.5 and 13.5. It reached, let's see, 10 for about a half second during the offseason. Was pretty much sitting at 9.5 since the summer. And from the moment that this came out and the Tampa game ended and Fields threw that second consecutive pick six, it has been everything towards Kansas City. And the problem is that the Chiefs haven't gotten their offense really going either. But you can look at it in one of two ways. Either A, it's maybe Eric Bieniemy did a little bit more than people were giving him credit for now that they've transitioned into Matt Nagy as their offensive coordinator, and Bears fans certainly know a thing or two about that. No, sure. Or it's just they were due for some regression. Kelsey didn't play in week one. The defense has been better than expected. They've changed their game plan a little bit, and they've played two good teams in Detroit and Jacksonville. This might be the positive regression game for Kansas City. So I'm with you. It's either going to be they just completely take the Bears for granted and Vegas makes a ton of money because somehow the Bears backdoor cover this game, or the public just is swimming like Scrooge McDuck in all their money because they took the Chiefs and they covered all the points that they're likely going to end up getting by the time Sunday rolls around.
Over under is 47.5 in most places that I'm seeing for that game. I'm not touching that. And like not going near it with a 10-foot pole. I feel like it could be a thing where Kansas City wins 28 to 10, or it could be, I don't want to say a shootout because I don't think that's what we're gonna get, but a 30 to 24 type game where the Bears show a little bit more fight than expected. 47.5. I think that's what I'm staying away from.
I will tell you this though, that line is on the move. Very much towards the over, because the Bears defense has been atrocious this year. Their defensive coordinator, Alan Williams, just resigned. All sorts of weird rumors out there too. Bears not the Bears, but Williams hired representatives basically say that all those rumors are true. All those rumors. All those rumors are not true. Just want to make sure that that's clarified. But it's a dumpster fire, man. And this line is, I'm seeing it at some books as already up to 51.5.
That is
the score
ungodly.
Has it at 51.5. Barstool has it at 51.5. So if you can still find 47, you might want to just take that and get some really good, plus EV on the board, knowing what else is available. But I don't really want to touch this game in general. Like I talked about this on Twitter a little bit. If you really are so desperate to bet on like the Chiefs this weekend, normally I'm never an advocate of doing a teaser when you're not passing through the key numbers of 7 and 3. And for anyone that's unfamiliar with a teaser, basically you pick two games for a traditional teaser and it moves the line 6 points in a favorable direction. So if you have like an 8-point favorite, that teaser moves it down from -8 to -2. Or let's say you're on a team that's a 2-point dog. That line moves it from +2 to +8. So you're going past these key numbers, and that really helps the odds work in your benefit. It doesn't really happen for the Chiefs game, but you can get it to under a touchdown because the line's currently at 12.5. You can do that with like Jacksonville this week. Move it from -8 to -2. So that's really the only way that I consider betting on that Chiefs game right now, unless you're really want to get on that plus EV on the total right now, which is clearly on the move.
For tonight's game, the San Francisco 49ers making their home opener at Levi Stadium, 2-0 against the New York Giants, who very well could be 0-2 if not for a historical franchise comeback against the lowly Arizona Cardinals. They will be without Saquon Barkley due to an ankle injury 49ers are 10.5-point favorites for their home opener. Over under is 43.5. I think the 49ers win and cover. I just don't believe in the Giants whatsoever. I know that these Thursday night games have a tendency to be a little bit odd. We saw the Vikings kind of have a backdoor cover last week against the Eagles. But with no Saquon Barkley, I don't think that offense has any sort of balance. I don't think the 49ers are horrified of Matt Breida taking carries for the Giants. And even if Brandon Ayuk doesn't go, he's still a true game time decision. I haven't seen any update on his status. You still got George Kittle, you still got Deebo Samuel, Christian McCaffrey. Like, they still have a ton of guys even without Brandon Ayuk in the lineup. And I think that they just kind of assert their dominance once more in their home opener and cover a 10.5-point spread. I can see something of a 28-13 type game tonight.
Yeah, usually these Thursday night games, especially when they're lopsided in favor of the home team, that's usually the direction that they tend to go in. Giants basically had to go from Arizona back to the Meadowlands and now go back to the West Coast.
It's a lot of traveling, Ben Heisler.
What's that?
It's a lot of traveling.
A lot of traveling. Yeah, some teams might make the decision to just stay out west. I don't believe the Giants did that, but I certainly can confirm that. Regardless, that's not a situation that you feel relatively comfortable trusting the road team, and a road team that has Daniel Jones at quarterback. Now, historically, over the course of his career, Jones has been far better against the spread on the road than at home. 19-8 over his career against the spread on the road. However, you look at his record straight up in night games over the course of his career, 1-11.
Goodness.
So I look at this matchup in the same way. Like, without Barkley, it's a significant downgrade to Matt Breida. The pass catcher showed up in the second half, but again, what's your measuring stick? It's Arizona's defense in a tank year, where if they were going to find one way to win a game, like, that was the opportunity, up 3 touchdowns in the second half. So I'm just not optimistic here for anything as it regards to the Giants. Now, the 49ers can maybe sleepwalk a little bit. Anytime you're going from a Sunday to a Thursday game, you might sleepwalk a little bit, but at some point, the run game is too dominant, and the Giants defense has been a shell of what was a pretty good unit from a year ago.
Yeah.
So unless Brock Purdy finally turns into a pumpkin, which hasn't been any indication that's happening, I'm probably with you here. I might try to wait to get a better number live. Now that it's up to 10.5, it's just a bad number to take, even for a long home favorite. But I have zero confidence in the Giants being able to pull it off, and especially cover tonight. So I think you wait this out. Maybe New York keeps it close in the first half, and then I think you pound San Francisco in the second half.
In terms of anytime touchdowns for this game, you had hit the nail right on the head in week 1, saying David Montgomery, pounding the table for David Montgomery. And that did come to fruition. I'm pounding the table for George Kittle tonight, where through 2 games, he's had 3 catches in each of them. They haven't really needed him to have a ginormous game, just because they've faced 2 teams that they're head and shoulders better than. If Brandon Ayuk does not go tonight, I expect a lot more of those targets to go toward Kittle. He had a touchdown on Thursday Night Football last year against the Seahawks. I expect a big night from George Kittle. And I'm going to take his over in receiving yards too, which I believe is at 45.5. So I'm expecting a good night from George Kittle, over 45.5 and a touchdown. What say you?
Yeah, I think Kittle is always going to be in play. He's one of those guys that, if you feel like he's coming into the game healthy, he's always worth consideration, because I think the lines don't always tend to adjust with him. And by the time that they finally do, it's usually when he gets hurt again, then you're back off of it. For anytime touchdown plays, I usually try to find guys that are still getting red zone opportunities without the books really truly recognizing it. Somebody like Darren Waller, he's caught both of his targets in the red zone this year, but he just hasn't gotten to the end zone. So there's some possible positive regression coming too. And the other reason that maybe you consider taking a New York anytime touchdown as opposed to San Francisco is that the 49ers change it up so much. It could be Samuel. It could be McCaffrey.
Yeah.
It could be one of their other slew of running backs. Ayuk is always in play. You mentioned Kittle. Who Daniel Jones is targeting.
Yeah.
And especially with somebody like Waller in the red zone, to me, that feels like the play that I feel a little bit more secure about. It's plus 310 right now on DraftKings. That's not terrible
Yeah.
for somebody that's seeing as many targets as Waller is. And also, if you're looking at sort of tougher spots within the 49ers defense, they're so good on the outside. But Waller, when he's healthy and active, is essentially unguardable, especially in the red zone. So that's probably a play that I would consider for tonight, knowing that they're going to have to throw pretty much all game.
Yeah. We talked about the Browns extensively in week 1 with their matchup with the Bengals. They are 3.5-point favorites against the Titans, which that number shocked me a little bit. Not to say that the Titans are like this, world beater of a team, but it's very clear that the Browns aren't that, and they're going to be without Nick Chubb for the remainder of the year. I love Tennessee not to only cover. I think they win outright. FanDuel has them at plus 152 money line. I think that they go into Cleveland and they straight up just pound it down their throats and win outright.
So this is a really interesting line that I think Vegas is trying to trap us in, because everything that you said, I wholeheartedly agree with. Tennessee under Mike Vrabel has been one of the best coaches over the last several years in not only covering, like there's a lot of Tomlin, and your listeners will appreciate this. There's a lot of Tomlin with Vrabel in the sense that they cover a lot of games as an underdog. They win a lot of games as an underdog. I think Vrabel's the only head coach over the past, 30 something years to actually have a better record straight up as an underdog, than sort of any other time. Like he wins games when he's not supposed to win games.
He raises their floor substantially.
100%. And the problem here is that Tennessee has been very good at stopping the run. Pretty bad at stopping the pass.
Yeah.
And I think from the matchup perspective, Cleveland obviously losing Nick Chubb for the year is devastating, but Jerome Ford steps up. They bring in Kareem Hunt, someone that's familiar with the system, but he hasn't really been good the last few years as well. Right. I just feel like we're walking into it with this game because the line for Tennessee at 3.5 feels so good and feels so right that it feels like the Browns end up just putting on a show defensively. Myles Garrett gets 3 sacks, and this ends up being like a 24-10 or 27-10 type game. Mm-hmm. So it's a stay away for me for now. I might lean on Cleveland at -3, just because Watson played so bad in that game against Pittsburgh. And it's a relatively short turnaround. But being back home where they looked so good in week 1 against Cincinnati, Tennessee now going back on the road, I just feel like this is the books are trying to trap you a little bit with this game, because most of us, I think, would have either Tennessee maybe +1, +2. The fact that it's at 3.5, just begging you to take them, makes me want to go the other way.
The Super Bowl will be taking place this weekend with the Chargers and the Vikings. I don't know what the hell to expect from this game. I believe it started off as a pick'em. The Chargers are now 1.5 favorites on FanDuel. Vegas expects somewhat of a high-scoring game. Over/under is 53.5 on FanDuel as well. If I gun to my head, if I had to really pick a winner, like who I trust more, I trust Kevin O'Connell and Kirk Cousins more than I trust Brandon Staley. If the Chargers start off 0-3, man, head's got to roll, right?
Yes. I mean, I don't know how Brandon Staley keeps his job if they start the year 0-3. Is this the opportunity where their new offensive coordinator takes over 3 games in? Maybe. That really hasn't been their issue. Remember, they didn't have Austin Eckler in week 2. Not sure what his situation is going to be, whether or not he's going to play. But if you're looking at historical trends over the course of his career, these are the games that Kirk Cousins usually wins and plays pretty well in. The total right now is 54.5. It's the highest so far of the season. I just need to figure out what the Chargers' plan is. Are you going to be more committed to the run? Are you going to work off of play action more? And when are you going to start getting pressure on the quarterback? You have so many talented guys on that defense. Why isn't anything happening in these types of situations? Maybe one area that I do like, Justin Herbert, 15, this is from Evan Abrams over at the Action Network. Justin Herbert is 15-32-5 against the spread in the second half of his career. That's That's atrocious.
That's very bad.
7-22-2 second half against the spread when leading at halftime.
God.
So maybe you take the Chargers first half, and knowing Kirk Cousins and the Vikings' ability, at least last year, in coming back in a lot of these games, knowing the amount of points that are likely to be scored, maybe you try and double dip this game a little bit. You take the Chargers. You mentioned they're a 1.5 point favorite at FanDuel. Most other books actually have the Chargers as a dog.
Wow.
So I think maybe you consider Minnesota in the second half over on FanDuel, where they're the underdog, and then go the other way, find shop around a little bit, try and get a Chargers in the first half at a better line as a dog as well.
I cannot wait to watch this game simply because I fully expect, like, we thought Browns Steelers was stupid on Monday night. This is going to be stupid, but with like good quarterback play. And
like stupid, but fun stupid, because you're actually getting points scored.
I'm excited to see how the Chargers inevitably mess it up with a dumb penalty, either at the end of the first half, or they're going to have like 14 guys on the field somehow, and they're going to clothesline a kicker. It's going to be great. Yeah, I'm very much looking forward to it.
As my good buddy Danny Parkins, who does afternoons in Chicago, said, there's a reason that the word fun is in dysfunctional.
Very, very well put. The Patriots haven't really won a lot of games in recent memory, but they beat up on bad quarterbacks, and they especially enjoy beating up on Zach Wilson. They are 2.5 point favorites on the road against the Jets. Over under is 37. I think New England gets their first win of the year. And, going back to the last game, if you're the Vikings and you start 0-3 and you're the Jets and you're 1-2 and you get beat by a Patriots team that's very bland, it benefits both teams. If the Vikings just embrace stinking, trade Kirk Cousins to the Jets can still go all in with Kirk Cousins as a hired gun for the year. I think that could be something to potentially watch for. But regardless, I am taking the Patriots and the points.
Yeah, it's another one of those games that I'm looking at the line and I'm thinking to myself, with Zach Wilson matching up against Bill Belichick, why isn't this line longer for New England?
Especially from, what we've seen in the history of that, the Zach Wilson versus Bill Belichick matchups, at least, especially last year, where he just gift wrapped like multiple interceptions each game to the Patriots.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe it's because the Patriots did not look good in week 2 in their home loss against Miami. They're 0-2 so far at home this year. That typically doesn't happen with Bill running the ship. And the Jets still do have a primetime win against a very good Buffalo team in which Josh Allen turned the ball over numerous times. And, maybe the betting market is sort of going off the idea of, well, yeah, Zach Wilson might suck, but I mean, are we really buying into Mac Jones being that much better? Like, push comes to shove, we still trust the Jets defense to deliver. And they can always make a play, especially at home. We've seen that their ability to get things done. And Breece Hall basically came out and said, we lost the game because they didn't get the ball enough to me. So now you have a squeaky wheel opportunity for Breece Hall against the Patriots defense that is good, but not near the level that we've seen over the previous, many, many seasons. They're just not dominant. So I can't help but wonder if that's maybe part of the consideration here and why it hasn't gone to 3. I think if the Jets are able to hang on and just, not make dumb mistakes, which again, Zach Wilson's quarterback, it's hard to trust that evaluation. But yeah, I think the Patriots are staring 0-3 right down the corner. And the Jets need to win this game too, because they have Kansas City at home coming up the following week. So they might be looking at it and saying to themselves, if we still want to put ourselves in a position to contend for the postseason, we got to get this one at home against New England. I think I'm going to lean Jets. Honestly, I hope this line gets to 3. If this line gets to 3, then I will absolutely take the Jets. And it goes against every fiber of my being to trust Zach Wilson against a Belichick defense. But I think the scheme in New York is better set up for him, where they can still run the ball and use Wilson and move him around in the pocket a little bit and cut the field in half. And I think he's less susceptible to making some of these mistakes. So I'll probably include the Jets maybe in like a money line round robin for some of these other underdogs this week. But I'm just not as confident as I should be in the Patriots. And I think the line is maybe indicative of that.
Ben Heiser, before we get you out of here, what is your favorite bet of the week?
Favorite bet of the week is not there. There's not a lot that I love this week. One area that I am going towards, again, it's another one that I'm kind of holding my nose a little bit. I've been impressed with Tampa Bay.
Yeah.
And they're at home against an Eagles team that, yes, is off to a decent start, but I mean,
haven't looked like themselves.
They're not themselves, and their defense is very young and making a lot of mistakes. And they're banged up too. Baker's looking competent. He hasn't turned the ball over. Evans is playing for a contract. Godwin is still putting himself in a nice position. They finally got White going in the backfield. And you don't really run on Philadelphia that much anyway. But I'd like the line at 5.5. I'd like it even more if it got to 6. But I've already taken Tampa Bay at plus 5.5 here at home. And the lines for most of the books has moved down to 4.5. I still think that's a reasonable place to be for Tampa. I don't know if they necessarily win this game outright, but they look competent. And there's a belief in Mayfield right now that I just didn't expect this early on. I bet Baker Mayfield beginning of the season 40-1 to lead the NFL in interceptions. And right now that doesn't look like that's going to be happening. But again, it's very early. It's still plenty of time for him to go ahead and help me out here. But I do think the line is still focused too much on Philadelphia from last year as opposed to what we've actually seen from them this year. And I do expect Tampa, if they don't come out and win outright, to keep it close. And maybe that's a surprise team that no one's really discussing to win the NFC South, because I haven't been impressed with New Orleans, and they should be running away with it. Falcons are 2-0, but they could be very easily 0-2.
Yeah.
Maybe you look at Tampa Bay right now and say there might be some value there as a futures pick to win the NFC South, and that line's going to move aggressively.
Oh yeah.
If they beat the Eagles on Monday Night Football. So maybe you jump the gun a little bit and put a little bit of pizza money on them to win that division, knowing that if they do win, the line's going to just be ridiculous by the time week 4 rolls around.
Always a pleasure talking to you, Benny Eisler. What do you got coming this week on KC Sports Network?
We have a really fun show that is going to be coming out on Friday. Maybe a little bit specific to our location, but for anybody that's enjoyed both of the guys that are coming on this week, we all used to host a show together in Kansas City for several years called The Drive. So Danny Parkins, who now does afternoon drives at 670 The Score in Chicago, and Carrington Harrison, who still does afternoon drive in Kansas City. We're all going to come together, talk a little Bears and Chiefs, as well as go over some of the other key games on the NFL slate. So a Drive reunion taking place this week. But both those guys have done national work for CBS Radio, Mad Dog Sports Radio. So you can basically hear them all over the place. Some big titans in the sports talk radio industry. And we're going to have a lot of fun, tell some stories from our heyday back in our 20s when we were running the show in Kansas City. So I encourage anybody who just enjoys some good, fun sports betting talk and probably some embarrassing stories about your boy. We'll get that all out of the show a little bit later on. So please do subscribe over at Kansas City Sports Network.
Ben Eisler, I appreciate you, my friend. We'll do this again.
Always fun, Jared. I appreciate you, man.
All right, buddy.